Good afternoon. I'm Charlotte Hampton-Campbell, the Student Affairs Coordinator for the MSW program. I'm an alum. I attended here for undergrad and grad in the BSW and MSW program. So just want to thank you all for coming to this session. This is the fourth of 5 sessions that we're having where we're bringing in alumni panel to talk about their careers in the field. And so today we were supposed to have 3 panelists, and one is in St. Louis, and she just got a job at a school, and so there was a gang situation this morning, so she's meeting with parents and students, so she may be able to join us either by Skype or via conference call. But if not, we have 2 other panelists here that will share with you about their experience in leadership and social change. So first we're going to have them introduce themselves, and then I have a list of questions that I'm going to reference, but the main focus today is to make sure you get your questions answered about this concentration. So jump in at any time, raise your hand, we'll answer your questions, and then we'll have some time at the end to also answer any questions that you may have. Would you like to start?
But I will. Hi, Jason Greenlee, class of 2013, so not that long ago. And I'm the Grants and Programs Administrator for Courage Connection. If you're not familiar with us, we're a domestic violence services provider.
And I am Kelly Jane Monahan, although everybody calls me KJ, so feel free to do the same. I am class of 2015, so even not too long ago. And I currently run a daytime drop-in center for the homeless in Champaign. It's called the Phoenix, and the Phoenix is with CU at Home, is a not-for-profit that the Phoenix operates under.
So I would like for each of you to talk in a little bit more detail about what exactly do you do in your positions. And by the way, I'm class of 93.
I love that you said that. You trump card.
Your turn to go first.
Okay, great. So there are a lot of different hats that I wear in my position. Not all of it is, a lot of it's not glamorous, but so what goes into running the daytime drop-in center, everything from day-to-day operations, how the center, how the center operates, enforcing rules, creating policies, making sure that the people that we advocate for are really taken care of to the best of our abilities. I oversee all of the volunteer coordination and all of the training of the volunteers, as well as the training of the staff. We like to make sure that our staff is up to date on things like crisis intervention and something called verbal judo. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that, but it's important with the population that we work with that we are all very up to date in sort of making sure that we are providing the best atmosphere that we can for our friends without an address. So just kind of as a point of reference, we don't, at CU at Home and at the Phoenix, we don't call the homeless homeless. We don't refer to volunteers as volunteers. You're either a friend without an address or a friend from the community, trying to kind of equalize that playing field and sort of thinning the line between having a home and not. So you'll hear me kind of reference our friends without an address or friends from the community. That's what I'm talking about. And that way everybody is sort of seen as a friend, trying to destigmatize not having a home. So from volunteer coordination and training, also the social work service delivery, so I do some case management, I do a lot of resource updating, making sure that all the resources that we have in the town is, they're up to date and everything is correct and organized in a way that is easily accessible. Let's see what else, overseeing the interns, making sure that we are molding young minds to have a heart and compassion for this population. and we do a lot of education and advocacy in the community, making sure we're getting out there, educating the public, educating the community on generally on homelessness and the services that are available and the services that aren't available, going to all of the macro level meetings and you know, the continuum of care and the Council for the Service Provided for the Homeless, crisis intervention training meetings, making sure that all of the leaders in the community are all on the same page about what we're lacking and what we can do to help kind of fill those holes and plug the gaps and stuff like that. I'm sure there's several more that I'm not thinking of, but that's a pretty good overview, I think.
Oh, yes, that would
Cover.
well, and I was just thinking, yeah, similarly, I'm just writing down notes while you were talking, because what don't I do?
Right. Right.
I'm probably getting a title change shortly to Operations Director, which is a more accurate representation of what I do, but very few people know what that means anyway, so that will remain mysterious. But I'm part of the executive team at Courage Connection, so a lot of my job has to do with maintaining compliance with all sorts of things, particularly with funder requirements, so I get to have a relationship with the funders. I do a lot of policy, work a lot of policy creation. I do a lot of training. I brought into our agency nonviolent crisis intervention training largely because I wanted to teach the version of that training that has to do with trauma-informed care. So I brought that in so I could do that, and that allows me to actually know our employees and have an impact. Longer term efforts, building in like long-term post-service evaluation, which for domestic violence is kind of a challenge because reaching out to people after they've had your services, there's a safety factor that we have to contend with, and we haven't quite cracked that yet. But again, a lot of community meetings. I don't currently attend the Continuum of Caring more, but I was the chair for a while of that body. And this afternoon I'm meeting with some of the executives at Rosecrans to talk about some potential future partnerships and what we want to do. And that's the fun of what we do. Don't have a good 9-to-5 job, which is nice, and I take advantage of that as much as I can.
Let's move on to question 3. What were your impressions on macro level social work before you started the MSW program? Was pursuing this concentration something you knew you were interested in right off the bat? And if not, when did it change?
All right. Actually, this one I took notes on, because before I came here, my story is pretty classic. I wasn't happy with leadership and management at the various places I'd worked. I did believe I could do it better. And it had a lot for me to do with lack of transparency. You know, fighting to get like copies of my budget, the one that theoretically that I'm in charge of, not being able to get answers to questions, just an answer, even if the answer is I don't know. And it was very, very frustrating, and I thought I could do it better. And as I've worked in my current position, I've done things like, a new hire comes in, hey, here's a copy of all the grants that fund you. I know you're probably not going to read it, but now you have it, and you know that my door is open, and you can ask me questions about that. And looking a lot at my career up to that point, the idea that I like to coach, and that strength of mine works better if I'm working with staff than I am if I'm working with clients. So in many ways, coming to school here to get the macro degree on some levels, I'd been in my career for 15 years. So I will say that some of my schooling, I was bored, some of it. In other ways, it really helped take me to the next level. So I was really glad that I came back to school and an internship in particular, because I actually did an internship in government. And then a job in government post-school, so that really, really helped broaden my horizons and give me a bigger sense of how the macro works, and how to best negotiate within it. I didn't put a period on any of these notes, so I guess I'm done.
So I guess my background differs a little bit in that my concentration during my my program was actually schools. So I was a schools concentration when I graduated. I was a school social worker. And I sort of happened on the position that I'm doing now because of a staff change within the organization. So when I was, throughout my grad school career, I was a friend from the community for See You at Home, and I had been volunteering on and off for about 6 years. And I had a couple of kids through that too, so I was, kind of in and out and back and forth. And after I graduated, I had just had my son, and I thought it probably wasn't prudent to go into a school social work environment quite yet. So I started, I was volunteering for Melanie Jackson, who was our founding director, and the person who was leading the Phoenix previously moved to San Francisco, and she asked me to fill in temporarily until they were able to hire someone. And so I started, and I fell in love with it. I fell in love with working with our Friends Without an Address. I fell in love with the community. I fell in love with, I guess, just the idea of, and whether this is true now or not, I'm still kind of, I've only been doing this for 3 years, so I feel like I'm still extremely new. But the ability to have a little bit of say in how things are done, and maybe affecting some change with how we're able to help in the community. So I stayed because I loved it. So I guess to answer the question, I didn't really think much about, the macro level of practice, especially throughout my grad school career. I didn't really see it until I was knee-deep in the position, and I thought, wow, there are some things that we're missing here, and how do we fix that? And the answer is, that's a really good question.
Well,
How do we fix it?
What I like about your story is, what draws a lot of us to social work, obviously, is the desire to help others and create a better life for not just individuals, but for society. The deeper you get into it, the more you realize it's a systems problem more than anything. It's not that we have a whole bunch of people out there making bad decisions and we can just stick around. No, there's systemic and structural issues. And that ability to have that say, to feel like you're making a difference, in direct service you can hit that wall pretty fast. When your client comes to you and says, yep, tried that, did that, can't do that because of this, that, or the other. It's a longer term gain. In some ways it's more frustrating.
Yes.
So many times I get to, okay, what do I need to fix this? I need to get more people to vote. Sometimes where I land, but that feeling of having the systems level impact is really, really attractive.
It is. It really is.
So I thought I didn't have macro level experience, and then I was talking with KJ because my concentration was CYFS. But about 12 years into my career, I was starting programs in areas that I saw deficits as it relates to foster children in care. So I started a mentoring program, I started a summer job shadowing program, I started a program where I worked with the foster parents. So I put those all together and created a nonprofit organization, and realized in my searching for monies that there was monies available through the Department of Children and Family Services for those youth that was sitting in accounts in Springfield. So I had to really advocate, hey, we need to tap into this. It says the rules attached to this money says it can be used for educational purposes and so forth. So then I was able to tap into those monies to help support those youth through my organization. And so I ran that for about almost 6 years before we closed, and I decided to do something different. But as Jason said, systems and gaps in those systems, and figuring out as social workers when you're in the field, how can you help close those gaps? What services, what can you do, what advocacy work can you do to again close those gaps? So kind of keep that in the back of your mind as you're finishing the program and looking to go into the workforce. Any questions so far?
Where in government did you work?
City of Champaign in the Neighborhood Services Department. They had a joke that there were a bunch of social workers until I showed up, and they realized maybe they should stop saying that. But the truth is they actually kind of approached their work like that. in the Neighborhood Services Department is the Code Compliance Division, the people who will tell you if your grass is too high. They actually just put out, they're trying a new initiative now too. If you're gonna get one of those letters that, you know, your house isn't the right way it's supposed to be, you actually get what is functionally a friendly reminder. And it's one of those things where, you know, you take care of it fast enough. It's actually, it doesn't even go on any sort of record. But it just, the languaging that they changed in these notices, because it's scary to get a notice from the government that says you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. And they've eliminated that. And that's the section of that office that actually is the most punitive, that has this power control. And they really try not to utilize that. Within the same department was what I would call community organizing. So, you know, one guy runs all that. And then neighborhood programs, which provides programs for not just general citizens, but people who don't have the resources or the skill set, and the office will help provide that. So it was a really, really good fit. And also introduced me to the why government is slow. Because they tend to be doing it, to do it right, you have to do it slow. So it ultimately was not a good fit for me. But I am so glad that I did it, because it really, really stepped up my game. And I'm super appreciative for those opportunities. Was there a question behind that?
I was just curious.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So tell us, what are the most enjoyable aspects of working in the area? LSC.
Parties.
The parties?
Yeah, definitely the parties. Grant planning parties, no, just kidding, just kidding.
Oh, there's a lot of alcohol though. No.
Let's see. Okay, so I think for you, because you touched on, and I'm not speaking for you, you touched on what you love to do is coaching. That's something that's enjoyable for you. I also love coaching and I love teaching, but I really enjoy the direct services part of my job. It's, you know, only 50% of my job, but I really enjoy building the relationships and believing in people and providing that unconditional support and love to people so that they are able to take those next steps in their lives. For me, I don't want to say that, I don't want to call it rewarding is such a tricky word to use because it doesn't, sometimes it doesn't feel rewarding, sometimes it feels exhausting and it feels angering and it feels frustrating, but yeah, I think for me, one of the most enjoyable parts is the relationships that I get to build and really working with such a wide variety of people that I never would have worked with without having been in this position, from all different kinds of walks of life.
It really, for me, it really is the coaching aspect. I love doing all those things for all those reasons, just at this comparable, different level of working with staff members and helping them be the best that they can be and providing them the resources that they can be. And finally being at an age where I have enough experience that I can use that experience to help educate others. It's another reason why I was glad I came back to school later in my career to get that kind of shot in the arm of the conceptual work that we were doing and pretty rejuvenated because I was in the field for a while and I was getting I can't think of a better word for this, but I was getting kind of conservative in my approach, and I think I needed the restart. So to balance that, the age experience angle. Does that make sense?
I like that word, conservative.
In retrospect, it's definitely where I was going as far as approach. I mean, I'm still a social worker, but yeah.
So you said you kind of was taking a conservative approach. Can you share with them an example?
I think I was getting stuck in a bubble because I was so deep into practice that I was too far away from philosophy and theory. And theory is just that. It doesn't ever apply perfectly when you actually get that there's so many systemic barriers to applying it. But I was starting to forget why I was doing the work that I was doing. I was so ensconced in the practice of everything. And in fact, what really pushed me to come back to school was I went to a conference for the nonviolent crisis intervention stuff I teach is from a company called CPI, Crisis Prevention Institute. And I went to a what do you call it, conference. And I just got to see a really well-run company. It helped that it was at Disney World. Everything's happier at Disney World. But I got to see a really well-run company that was very healthy. And it gave me that perspective that I had lost because I had been with my previous employer for, in one job or another, for almost 15 years. And so that helped me see that I was missing some things. And that helped me make the decision to say it's time to restart. And it was scary, especially when you're used to being an adult, paying your bills, and your house. And, starting over was pretty scary, but I'm glad I did it.
Next question, what are some of the barriers that you face in your current job with regards to providing services to clients? And how do you work to overcome those barriers?
I think right now, so I would say there are a few different barriers, and it isn't just, so for our organization, See You at Home, the not-for-profit that I work for, there are 4 people that work there. And I don't think I've touched on this yet, but we are an entirely community-funded organization. We have no government funding whatsoever, no grants, no federal money, no state money, no local money, nothing like that. It's all community funded. So we're funded through the generous donations of individuals, community members, churches. We have one fundraising / community awareness event every year called One Winter Night. It's a homeless simulation event where we ask people to spend the night in a cardboard box the first Friday in February and raise $1,000 to go toward our operating budget. Generally, that covers about 2/3 of our operating budget, but we don't have a huge operating budget. Right now, we are in the process of kind of expanding that because not this year, but next year, our goal is to absorb the CU Men's Shelter and operate that as a 365-day men's shelter in Champaign-Urbana, which is something that's huge that we don't have right now. But I want to reiterate that there's only 4 people that work in that organization right now. So there's a lot. We have these big, hairy, audacious goals, and there's 4 of us. So I want to say right now, staffing sometimes is a barrier to providing the services that we need to, because we have 4 of us, and we're all trying to fill in these areas that need to be filled in. Sometimes I see the need for, so our drop-in center, which is a drop-in center where you can go to wash your clothes, you can go to take a shower, to clean up, to receive social work services, referrals, fill out a job application, play cards, build relationships with people, but we're open Tuesday through Friday from noon to 5. So if you look at that, that's 4 days a week for 5 hours at a pop. We could probably use that drop-in center all the time, if from 8 to 8. Really, we would be able to expand our services so that we could meet the needs of more people. Right now, it's a very specific group of people that aren't working, for instance. That I'm sure there's a lot of people that need to take a shower before they get to work at 9 that can't because we're not open. So I would like to see that. I'm hesitant to say funding is a barrier. But it is technically right now, because of our goal of opening this shelter, we just physically don't have the money to do that right now. We don't have the staff to do that as well, but that's all part of growing as a not-for-profit. We are 6 years old, we're 7 years old, so we're still kind of in the newer phases of doing this. And then a barrier that isn't necessarily like a bam in your face barrier that bears mention is human beings, human nature. And I don't want to say, and I'm certainly not placing blame on anybody, but the people that you work with, it's a systemic issue, are used to a certain routine, a way of living your life when you have been doing the same thing for, say, 25 years, and it's so hard to break the habit of doing that same thing. So a barrier to helping someone help themselves is oftentimes themselves. And that is just, it's all kinds of layers of complication and grayness. So that sometimes is a barrier as well.
Particularly when combined with any sort of lawsuit of client-driven services.
Yes. Yes, you cannot wave a magic wand and say, you need to do this, or I want you to want this for yourself, but you don't want this for yourself. But it is client-driven. You have to let them determine where their next steps are.
I used to joke that I was going to start a group called Insight Group. Couldn't figure out how to make that one work. Barriers, the risk of repeating a lot of the stuff KJ just said. Funding restrictions. So we do have a lot of funding restrictions from federal agencies, from state agencies, from local agencies. And there are barriers. I mean, we're smart enough to make sure that no employee is funded by any one funder, because then they wouldn't be allowed to do certain things, or would have to exclusively do certain things. But that creates a nightmare of tracking, of somebody's tracking their time and which services are being done at what time, and being able to report that back. I've actually dropped a number of funding sources because it got too complicated, or the people on the other end, the funders, didn't have their act together, and we're the ones who are going to take the hit if we aren't fully compliant. So that has been a challenge, but we also have made the point of investing in a development department. We have 2 employees whose whole job is to go, raise money for the agency, because that money will necessarily be unrestricted. You didn't say affordable housing, but you meant to say affordable housing.
I did so meant to say affordable housing.
Lack of affordable housing.
Affordable housing.
Even projects like when cities are doing redevelopment projects, Bristol Park is one that's being done right now by the city of Champaign. That is going to make that area a lot more dense. There is a lot of stuff from day one. They're like, you have to use this to increase affordable housing. That is still hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of units short of what is needed in town, based off of a 2010 housing analysis that was done for the county. Community understanding of issues, because obviously homeless people are just lazy.
So lazy.
Totally, that's
Just pull
clearly
yourself
what's
up by the bootstraps. You can do it.
Just go get a job. I have a job.
American dream.
You can jump in any time.
We're like Abbott and Costello.
And so it's been interesting because my previous job prior to homelessness was, prior to government was homelessness work. And so I was very used to a lot of that. And working for domestic violence, I found that people are more receptive to our population, which has been a nice change. However, there's still a lot of the ignorant questions. Why does she just leave? Offhand, if anyone here can draw, I've been trying to pull together a comic book version of Why Does She Stay, just as an easier way to access those concepts for people. I've seen that type of tool work really well. I can draw, I can't draw all of that well enough. Just putting that out there if anyone's wants an art project, I have one for you. And then just something that I think a lot of people don't think about. Our agency, Courage Connection, is what's known as a small business, so we can't go over 50 employees. And that's not 50 full-time equivalents, that's 50 employees. And so every time we look at wanting to reorg ourselves and provide services a different way, or add a service, we just hit that ceiling. Because if we go to become a medium-sized business, that kicks in all these different laws and responsibilities, where it's not fiscally possible. We can't just move to 53 employees. We'd have to go from 48, 49 to something like mid-70s, and you don't just do that. And as a result, too, we have healthcare, but we don't have the best healthcare system. We don't have retirement benefits, so that makes it hard for us to be competitive. And this is somewhat apropos of nothing, but since we're here, one of the few benefits that we have uniquely to Courage Connection is, given that we are a feminist agency, every year International Women's Day is an agency holiday. So don't try to reach us on March 8th. It's not going to happen. We're shut. So I'm just bragging for that one. It doesn't, I would trade that in a heartbeat for really good retirement benefits for our employees. And again, something I'm working with our development director on bringing in as much as possible. But those are, things that you don't necessarily think about unless you're one of the people who is in a position who has to think about them.
Share with us a success story or an accomplishment that you've experienced in the field.
I'd like to go first on this.
Please.
I'm hoping this, because something you said earlier made me think of this. I've been at Courage Connection now for a little over 3 years, and I was brought in some ways very much to help improve the culture, to be part of that. And 3 years in, I'm starting to see it in concrete ways. Things like my language, my philosophies, the terms I use, I'm starting to hear them repeated at all levels of the agency. And it was always going to take that long. But it's really, really nice to see that happen, to see the influence of your work. And it shows up as well in data sometimes, in improved services. Data is a whole thing we could talk about at length as far as the quality of data you can actually get when working with the various populations that we work with. But, yeah, just it's coming.
Agreed.
It doesn't help to see how it's had, in short years, it's had so many moves and turnovers and shifts, but that's actually normal. Name changes and mission statement changes and physical, maybe different places changes. That's, if your agency hasn't moved for several years, there's probably something wrong, right? Something's a little too stagnant.
True.
I may have gone off topic. But
No, I think that kind of jumping on that bandwagon that Jason was talking about, the thing that I mentioned in the beginning, the friends without an address and the friends from the community, that term I've heard, obviously we use that at our staff, but our staff's 4 people, so that's not a big win there. Community-wide, every time we go out and we talk to a church community or a school or a fraternity or sorority or a small group, you explain that very simple concept of change starts with maybe just, has anyone seen the TED Talk that went viral about language, about how, no? Okay. Did you, I don't remember. I can't remember who it was. I'm remiss now because I would like to be able to quote her, but she, just changing the way that you talk about something is a very basic way to start a movement. Instead of referring to someone as homeless with all of the stigma that goes along with that, changing that to friend is huge. It's a very small thing, but it's like throwing a stone into a still pond and watching the ripples, seeing people refer to people as friends without an address. Even people maybe I've never met before that refer to that, and I'm like, why did you hear that? That's so cool.
One of the first people that did that actually was my old boss at the city of Champaign, Carrie.
Yes.
She was one of the first people to adapt that, and I think because she holds such a position of power in this community as a community leader and somebody who's on this, that, and other committees, you got one key person, and I think that helped spread a lot of that. But I remember the first time I heard her say that, going, see, they're doing it right.
Yeah.
See, everyone's got that going on. They're
Yeah.
changing the language. It matters.
It does matter, and that's a little thing, and I think that that has been a huge success for us, it's just that little word.
It reminds me of working in the field of foster care, and my husband and I were foster parents for 21 years, and every time we had a placement, we asked the child or the youth, what do you want to refer to us as, and what do you want us to do? You know, do you want to be called foster children, our children? We let them make the decision, because some didn't want to be our children, because to them, they were detaching themselves from their biological family. Some didn't care about being the foster child, and then some wanted to fit in, like, no, that's a stigma, I don't want people to know. So again, that name change, and then the department decided to stop calling them foster children and youth in care, but people still reference foster children. But again, giving them the opportunity to say, especially those that were old enough to make that decision, how do you want to be, you know, how do you want us to reference you as you're a part of this family? And
That's very
connecting.
empowering, a very
Yes,
empowering
absolutely.
thing for them.
Absolutely. I have to share this funny story, then we'll get back on track. So I had this one foster daughter, and she was really, really short. She was a teenager. And we were at Target shopping, and so she came out of the dress and, Mom, what does this look like? And so some of her friends were there, it's like, that's your mother? She's tall. What happened? And just instantly she said, yeah, this is a result of infertility drugs. I think it made me short. And I was like, good answer.
Good for her.
It was really good, yeah. So again, she wanted to fit in and not be stigmatized. And then when someone made that reference, I mean, she was on it. So yeah, pretty neat. All right, moving on. Do you anticipate doing macro level work for the remainder of your career? Why or why not?
Not once I get my novels published, you know, they're doing that.
Your comic book novels?
Yeah, well,
Great.
can't drop them. I don't intend to return to direct service, not in any extended form. I'm good in it, but this is where I fit better, and I know that about myself. You know, that said, you know, if you'd caught me 15, 20 years ago and told me what I'd be doing for the next 15, 20 years, I wouldn't have pegged any of this. So, you know, we'll see. I remain open to where I can do the most good, and what's the best for me.
I like that, where you can do the most good. That's key.
Amen. Full disclosure, I have this last clue. I don't know. Like I said, I didn't know I was going to be doing this 3 years ago, and I love it, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to love something else in another 3 years or another 15 years. I think remaining open to where your life takes you, and you have no idea. It's so hard to say this is what's going to be. I love it, so I don't know, maybe.
I would issue a caution based on this. Something I've observed over the years is that people who are in direct service eventually get the opportunities for promotion. And the opportunities for promotion are attractive. Obviously, there's more money, there's the way more negotiable and better schedule, and there is that potential to affect systemic change, even if it's just at the level of your agency. But if you do not have or are not provided in that promotion the training and the skill sets that need to come with that, that can be really challenging. My first supervision job, where I was suddenly supervising 9 people, all of whom were older than me, was made a lot easier by the fact that through a volunteer effort, for the previous 4 years, I was managing a team of 9 volunteers, all older than me. So it was a relatively easy slide in for me, but that's just because on my own in my private time, I was getting that experience, not knowing that it was going to pay off later. And then I did a lot of self-education. But I've seen a lot of people take those promotions woefully unprepared, and then the ripples really come from that too. And I think people forget that it's not just the unhappy work environment that very quickly pays off in poor service quality, which is of course the antithesis to what we're here to do. So as you get offered those promotions, give some thought to it and ask the questions of what support you will have in having that different and needed skill set.
Ongoing training and development is really important.
Which again, breaking insurance, you can make sure that that's implemented.
Yes.
I mean, we do that via domestic violence training, culture of humility, CPI, and we're building in now, because we've recognized that's an issue for us as well, having a leadership development. So we can, when people do take that step forward, when they really are the best person, but they don't quite have those skills yet, we can help provide it to them.
Yeah, I remember when I finished the program, got my MSW, and I worked in this area for about 2 years, and I moved to Chicago, and I was promoted within 6 months as a supervisor. In my previous job that I left, I did not function in the role of supervisor, and it was very critical that I asked the right questions about training, had a supervisor that was willing to coach me, even though I was going to become her peer now. And that was really, really effective. And after 3 years in Chicago, I moved to Champaign, and I didn't have that direct supervision because when I moved back here, my supervisor was in Peoria. But because of that training that I got in Chicago, it really helped me to be able to function independently as a supervisor. So that's key, yes.
Question, honestly. Do you have any advice on like what route to take with an internship? Because obviously you went to schools and you're not in schools at all.
Yes.
And like having I have no idea what's gonna happen.
Yes.
Because I'm in that as well. Like I have different ideas of what I am interested in, but I have no idea where I'm going to end up.
Clarification, internship for BSW or MSW LSC, what are you talking about?
MSW LSC.
Got it.
Where are you at right now in your program? Are you,
First year.
This is your first year, so is it a 2-year program for you?
It's like the 1 year classes and then the 2 semester internship.
Yeah, so you're approaching that, you're getting prepared to do, okay. So obviously I did my internship in a school where I was able to see, kind of that, the glass ceiling of the macro level practice, which again, I had never thought about until I was in my internship, and I was like, well, that's crazy that you can't do this, or this has this weird policy, and now I can't do what I need to do because of this policy. I think that, honestly, choose an internship although I don't know, because I didn't do that. I was going to say, choose an internship that makes you uncomfortable, that you think, I wouldn't necessarily, like, when I'm listening to my heart, I wouldn't necessarily choose that because I feel like but when you're looking at the list of places where you're like, I could intern here, I could intern here, I could intern here, I chose an internship that was comfortable for me, and I ended up somewhere completely different. So I think it's just a matter of, it's very important that you get experience in places where you don't tend to go yourself. Because the more experience that you have in a broader arena, A, is going to introduce you to things that you didn't even know. You don't know what you don't know, right? So you're going to go someplace and you're going to be like, well, I didn't know that, and look at this. And you would never have known that, and now you know. Or on the opposite hand, you could be like, you know what? I tried this and I hated it, and thank goodness I had that experience, because I could do that 10 years from now and be miserable because you thought, oh, maybe I could try this, but you're fresh out of your internship, you're fresh out of grad school, and you're going to have the opportunity to, you're not applying, you are applying and interviewing for it, but it's an internship. It's not the weight of the world, and paying your bills isn't part of this. This is, get the experience that you wouldn't be comfortable in. But don't stretch yourself too much, because you don't want to be miserable for the entire year. But
so if you go in schools, you're going to be charged with learning the school process and systems.
Yes.
And as you're doing that, keep in the back of your mind the macro level of how the school system works, how community systems impact the school, and then that will give you an advanced level of understanding. And once you finish your intern, you can decide, okay, yeah, I want to continue this path, but no, while I was there, I learned about this issue or this problem, and I think I'm going to pursue an organization where I can be more impactful at that level.
So yeah, if you I'm going to come directly back to your question in a second. If you don't do ALSC, when you're doing your learning plan, ask whomever you're working with what opportunities there are to get exposure to macro level stuff. It'll be exposure only probably, but see what the agency or school or whatever can provide to you and grab that. Understanding, I found that it's easier to ask people to be compliant with something if they understand why they have to do it. Even if they don't agree or don't like it, it's like, oh, I was told to do the stupid thing for a reason. The reason does actually exist. The stupid reason I hate it, but you know, at least there was some thought put into it. I'm going to tell a story to get at the point for you. When I quit my job to go back to school, because that was me, I knew I couldn't do both. I'm not possible. And that was Rachel. Is Rachel saying hi? Waving? No, she walked away. I made a point because I knew I was going to be like out of work for 6 months before school started. So I actually went to the United Way, people that I was working with already for my job, and I said, this new emergency family shelter thing that you're putting together, can I come in as a consultant? Can I, just so I could stay connected, wasn't like hiding in my house for 6 months. And I'm glad I did that. Not only did it keep me together on a project that then I saw through my time with the city, and I still see through my time with Courage Connection because it all overlaps, but that's where I was maintaining relationships. And when it came to looking for an internship for LSC, and there is no list, right? If you're an LSC, there's no like ready list of places to do an internship. You're going to be finding your own. I went to the two people at the cities, Champaign and Urbana. I literally went up to them and said, I need an internship, can you help me? And both of them actually said yes. And complication stuff, and then eventually ended up at Champaign. The point being, leaning on and working with what you've been doing up to this point, the relationships that you have. If you don't have those, making them. Hopefully everyone here has not just been in school, that you've actually been putting yourself out there and doing volunteer work, or you've had jobs along the way. Every time I see a group for clients that talks about like getting a job, and they're talking about resume building and how to interview, and I'm like, that's 20% of how to get a job. The other 80% is networking, right? Every job you've ever had, isn't that basically how you got it? Because you knew somebody that told you about it, you got in there a little faster than somebody else, or they knew you, and that reputation, that friendship built into something. I mean, that's what happened. I networked my way into an internship. I've seen a lot, over the years that I've been out, I've seen a lot of LSC students struggle with the internship stuff. Professors have asked me to meet with students and talk them through with like how they individually can get there, and yeah, take advantage of those things, ask for help, because love LSC, love everything about it, but man, yeah, getting an internship, tough. I currently have an intern, and that was my way of paying it forward, but also I said I was going to do it last year, and the interviews were not good. I said, no, I'm not going to bother. This year I found a good candidate. And I intend to do it again in the future, but I'm already thinking, am I going to need a year off? Because, up until that point I had one employee. Now I have two. It's like twice as many employees. Yeah, that wasn't joking.
I had to wrap my brain around that for a second.
Thank you, that was the laughter I was looking for.
That was math.
Wasn't it hard, man?
It was a little bit for me.
But you probably, just speaking directly to you, if you're thinking and stressing like, I have no one to ask, you probably do. And it's more a matter of sitting down with somebody who can ask the questions and draw it out to figure out what networking that does already exist. And then following through on that. And then yeah, that was a bit of bravery and more humility than I'm used to, going up and asking those two women for internships, because that's not a small ask by any means. But it also worked. I got 2 yeses.
Did that answer your question, or are you more confused?
It added.
Okay.
Yeah.
It helped.
If you have the opportunity to do some direct practice, do it. If you have the opportunity, try it, because you may fall in love with it. You don't know. You don't know what you don't know.
and you're on a path of discovery, trying to figure it out. And the internship will allow you that opportunity.
And the good news is that you don't have to do anything you don't want to. Just because you're hired and you do it for a little bit and you say, not for me. Bye, Felicia. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to.
Just do it the right way.
You know, yes.
Because
yes.
everybody's
Yes.
connected all over Illinois, not
Yes.
just in Champaign-Urbana.
And it's very important to be honest, you know what I mean? You go to your supervisor and you said, I thought that I would love this position and it turns out it's not a great fit for me, so I'm here until you find someone else to do it. You know what I mean? There are good ways to break up with somebody, we all know that, right? Find the good way. But do what you, put your fingers out there. Dip your fingers in all the paints. And see what you create. I did that just now. Did you see what I just did? I'm just way too pleased with myself for that analogy.
Yes.
So I have a question. I'm really big on policy, hence the leadership and social change. But I'm also really client-centered and want to be trauma-informed. I want to believe that I'm trauma-informed and client-centered. However, I've noticed that a lot of the time those two collide. What the policy states that I'm capable of doing and what my advocacy, the part of me being client-centered and trauma-informed is doing. A lot of the times those collide. Are you guys having some of that? And if so, what are you doing when that situation arises?
I don't find that, but I don't find that because I regularly teach trauma-informed care content, so it stays on top of my mind. But I did that on purpose. It's actually one of the reasons I became a CPR instructor years ago, because I hated going through that class, feeling really confident I could save a life, and then 3 weeks later not feeling that anymore. So having to teach really keeps that stuff on top of my head. That's my balance, since I don't do direct service, right? When I'm there conceptualizing policies and trying to make them work, I've got all the different classes I've taught that year, and all the feedback and stories I've heard from all of our employees that help me feel like I'm actually current with what's actually going on. And that also reminds me, if I have a particular how's the rubber meet the road here, I can go to that employee. I don't find that there's ever really any structural barriers. It's more about being creative about how you implement your policies and how you write them. And if you really do have a roadblock, candidly getting rid of that funder and not taking their money. That creates other problems because you have to replace that money somehow, probably. I actually have held up CU Home as this really idealized model of freedom for funding because it's completely unrestricted. For the size of our agency, we couldn't do that, but we are trying really hard to shift that percentage into our development department so we can have that flexibility and do more. And then if we're paying people 25% of their position out of a grant, we can manage that. I have not found those roadblocks. If you had specifics, I'd love to talk more detail later, but I haven't had that experience.
I don't, and to be, again, full transparency, I'm not the best person to speak on that particular question because the way that our funding is structured is that we don't, our policy is, we kind of we shoot from the hip, and if we have a policy that's not working, we change it. We have the ability to do that because we don't have any government funding. So I don't know that I have any examples specifically, but I mean, it's a great question. It is a very good question, and there's a lot of thought behind that. Unfortunately, I don't have. I mean, maybe you have some.
Yeah, without a specific situation.
I know we all have
Yeah, we
class.
are.
We all have class. So.
We are 5 minutes
Maybe some
over
other
time. Okay, you can always come by the office and we can chat, and then you can get Jason's information as well. Well, thank you all for coming out.
Thank
and
you.
Hearing our panelists. Did everybody sign in?
That's hilarious. It's awesome.
It's heavier than